Hey, Scott, I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if you saw this hashtag on Twitter yesterday, schools over bars, meaning that we need to prioritize getting our kids back in schools before we need to prioritize getting folks back at bars. And what seems to be trending, or what was trending with that, were two competing studies. One that came out yesterday, I believe, out of Geneva. It was a small study that showed that kids actually could spread COVID. It was, I think, about 23 or 24 children who had COVID that they had surveyed. And yet then there was another study from a week ago out of France suggesting that kids can't transmit it nearly as much. Where do you land on that? And why is the science not clearer at this point, given that we've had 4 months of it?
Kids can spread COVID. The question is, can they spread it as efficiently as adults? And most of the data suggests that the answer is probably not. But that's not necessarily satisfying. Just because they might not be as susceptible and contagious as adults doesn't mean they're impervious to it. And there's nothing to suggest that they are. So they can get it and they can spread it. I mean, part of the challenge is that we haven't done good seroprevalence studies in children to know how many actually have been affected. Part of the problem is we're not testing children. So in a lot of states, even now in the United States, children don't get tested. If you're under 12, you don't get tested in Florida. If you're under 16, you don't get tested in some of these drive-through sites. So we haven't been readily testing children. Keep in mind also, the first thing we did, and every other country did when they had an epidemic, was shut their schools. And so it may very well be that we've protected the kids, and this hasn't really been a high prevalence event in children. So children may have been underexposed to this virus. And when you do open the schools in the fall and you still do have spread, we may see this become more epidemic in kids. That's certainly what happened in Israel. They reopened their schools against the backdrop of a little bit of spread. They really crushed their virus, and they had some major outbreaks in the schools. And so there's nothing to suggest that the kids or the schools are impervious to this. We just closed the schools really early, so this never became epidemic in a school-age population in the way, for example, flu does every year.
Hey, Scott, to that point, I'd been feeling kind of bad that I'd been keeping our teenagers home, not letting them go out. They were telling me yesterday about how all of their friends had been out at house parties and had been kind of acting as if nothing was going on. And I was wondering if I was being too harsh. This morning I saw a story about how in West Nyack, one of the cities right here in Rockland County, there had been an outbreak of coronavirus that was traced back to a house party of a bunch of teenagers and young 20-somethings, and that the host had been symptomatic when they did this. There had been 2 house parties with related guests since that time, and that a lot of the people are refusing to help out with contact tracing because they don't want to get anybody in trouble who was underage and shouldn't be there. What message do you take away from that? What should people be hearing about this? What should they be thinking?
Look, and there's been other reports like that where there's been parties and it's been a congregate setting where there's been spread. There was a report in the Washington Post yesterday of an event in Washington. There was an event here in, I think, in New York or Connecticut that got reported on. I wouldn't be going to or hosting parties for young people right now. I mean, I think that your kids can start socializing again. Mine have. But we've kept a small social circle. They're seeing the same friends that they're very close with, people we trust. I wouldn't be putting them into a large congregate setting until this is passed. We have another, 6 months with this. We'll have 2 months of relative quiescence here in the Northeast. July and August should be okay. I think things will heat back up in September. And this will be over by January, one way or the other. Either we'll get to a vaccine or we'll just have spread enough that it's going to stop spreading efficiently. So we have a short period of time to get through. We should do everything we can to preserve what we want of our way of life over that time period and just get through it.